Welcome everyone. Welcome back. If you're a longtime subscriber, if you're newly subscribed, thanks for watching. We have another Spark EV video for you. Today we're going to be installing Megan Racing coilover suspension on an electric car. One of the reasons I got the Spark to begin with was because it is made off of a platform that Chevy already has. It's not like the Bolt, a one-off car, where if they don't make anything aftermarket for it, you're probably not going to be able to fit anything to it. Thanks for sticking with this channel, everyone. This is not like all the other YouTube channels out there almost with big budgets, and these guys are making tons of money and they can do their cars and upgrade their cars. My process is a slow burn because I have a full-time job, and it might take me a little bit to buy the parts and to get the parts on the car and edit the videos. It's all done by me, so thank you, everyone. Now, let's start this off by saying that the gas Spark is a little bit different from the Spark EV. The EV car has a battery, and therefore it has some extra power and it has some extra components, as well as different springs in the rear and the front. Just remember that the Spark was revised for the 2016 model, but still retains the EV 2015 body style. The fronts are a direct bolt-in, as the rears will need some type of modification, so this video is only going to cover the front for right now. Here's the stock stance for the Spark, which isn't really too bad. There are other cars that are worse. Now on the Megan Racing site, you have to look very carefully at the front and rear spring rate, as the rear springs for the Spark EV upgrade are better than the Megan Racing kit. So the fronts are really going to be where you're going to see the most improvement, and the rear damper adjustment is going to be your biggest improvement. The first thing we have to talk about is tools. I had to assemble a lengthy toolkit. One of the reasons is this tool right here. I am not spending $175 on this tool, which has a 45 Torx 6-star bit in the middle and a 24 mil spanner on the outside. Luckily, Schwaben makes this strut socket 24 mil nut, and I found a fellow Torx bin bit that fits a 1/4 inch stock. Now the whole entire reason for that is so that you can put that 45 Torx bit in the middle socket of the Schwaben. You want to hold the center shaft still with the 45 Torx bit while you loosen it up with the 24 mil. Now we're just loosening this up and leave it with a couple threads on it until we remove the whole entire piece in order to take the strut out from the body. The QuickJack SLX 5000 kit works well with the Spark EV. Onto the front strut itself, 18mm I found works best. Another thing to note is that both of these bolts don't have any type of camber adjustment, so you can mix them up. I would remove these first. These are the stabilizer link or the sway bar end links, and they require a 5 hex and a 17 mil to take them off. You have to hold the shaft still, just like the strut. There's also 2 rubber grommets. One is for your brake line and one is for your ABS line. A little bit of lube works really good with these. That's all the wetness that you see here. Now, a really nice trick for these, especially the top one, is to just use a little bit of power. This is a slow process of turning it here, but if you use a 17 mil with a little bit of like an impact driver, you will be able to just get it right off without having to use this process, but you will need to do this for the opposite side lower underneath. Now these are just straightforward nut and bolt. Those bolts should slide out of there easily. Take a rubber mallet and hit them out if they don't. Use some WD-42 or some lube, they'll get them out. Be careful not to rip the caliper line and the ABS line out while you're taking the strut out. They can get hooked on some of the components. Now be gentle with the hub. It will hang freely. You just don't want to bend any of the tie rod end or anything like that. Remembering that the Megan Racing kit for the coilovers is for the Spark gas petrol car. So this aluminum brace is not needed on the top for the top mount, but you want to take this little black plastic shroud off. This is going to keep the top mount from hitting the springs and probably making a ton of noise. Now I went the other route here and used a spring compressor to take off the stock top mounts. Now I would not suggest this. I would buy brand new top mounts so that you can leave your stock struts assembled, so you don't have to reassemble them and mess with another spring compressor. This way, if something does happen, you can throw the stock ones back in.
Megan Racing says to set these up so that when you have all the threads showing here, make sure that you have this on here so you don't bottom out on this thread here, because if you do, you'll actually run out of thread. So you want this here. But the problem is when you put this on and the preload was set from the factory for the gas spark, you see what happens here is I was losing all that thread on top, and that's no good because that means the mount won't seat properly. Like your top hat isn't going to seat properly inside the spark. So you want to get this down, get this preload down so you still have lots of thread. You want a bunch of thread. See, so even if you bottom this out, you'll still have nothing but thread. So get it to there. And then Megan Racing says 0 preload is just about there. You see how it just made tension with the top hat, so it spun it? That's supposed to be 0 preload. And then you can tighten these two, and then we'll do the height later when it's in the car.
A 24mm deep socket attaches the top mount to the strut. To tighten it fully, you can just hold the top of the mount, the rubber part, and tighten the rest down, and it'll tighten completely without spinning. Recently subscribed to an online repair manual for the Spark EV, which is just wonderful, and it says that the strut lower mounting nut is 48 foot-pounds. Just for a visual reference, you should have this amount of strut sticking out from the perch. Next is the stabilizer link or sway bar end link. This is one of the most important parts of the installation. Now, if you put both the Megan Racing and the stock suspension side by side, you can see that this perch here, where the stabilizer link sits, is way shorter on the Megan Racing kit. And that's why Megan Racing supplies you with shorter stabilizer arms. The bearing adjustment of this kit stems from this right here. This whole entire steel attachment on the bottom can be threaded into the insert itself, making it shorter or longer. You don't adjust the height by the preload, you adjust the height by the steel collar.
The Schwabin. So use your Schwabin 24 with your 5 hex key. Just to show you the difference here, here's the stock EV strut, and that uses the 6-star Torx. And here's the Megan Racing, and it uses a 5 hex.
Once the coilover is assembled, place it back in the car and attach the upper strut mount to 48 foot-pounds. Using the 18mm nut and bolt, reattach the strut bracket to the hub. Now for the trickiest part of the installation. Once it's in and your preload set to 0, you might have to redo that again because you're going to need to make this sway bar end link fit. So you see how this has really a lot of play in it and there's nothing being pushed or pulled? It's really loose right now and the nuts aren't even attached yet. The Megan Racing kit gives you nylon locking nuts, but you still have to use a 5 hex key to hold the inner shaft. Right now, to make this fit, you can spin this up and spin this whole entire assembly. When attached correctly, the stabilizer link or sway bar end link should have 0 tension on it. You should be able to push and pull on the sway bar with ease. There should be no stress on the stabilizer link. Use a 17mm and a 5 hex to tighten up the nylon locking nut. Then tighten up the 218 nut and bolt that hold the strut to the hub. It states that those steering knuckle bolts are 59 foot-pounds of torque. Guys and girls, it is super important that before you do anything and put the car back on the ground, that you tighten up all these locking nuts that Megan Racing supplies these awesome spanners and wrenches for you. All these need to be locked down for the height and the preload itself. Using a little rubber mallet is a good idea to tighten and or loosen some of the locking nuts themselves. Unfortunately, because the stabilizer link is attached to the strut body, the height adjustment isn't too good. You can only adjust so much before the stabilizer end link starts to really start pulling on the sway bar itself, When that happens, the car might go leaning to the left or to the right, depending on how far and how hard you're pulling on that sway bar. You can see here, each time I turn this hub is actually moving up. You can see that I'm crimping the caliper hose, and the brakes might not even work well. So you really have to be careful about your height adjustment. So the right strut was very easy to reinstall, but the left strut, to remove it, you're going to have to take the battery out. Process is the exact as the right side. Now once you're done, you can thread these awesome little Megan Racing damper adjustment tools onto it. These actually thread onto the perch, and then the top black piece rotates on its own. There's 15 levels of dampening adjustment. All the way left is soft, and all the way right is as hard as it'll get.